يحذرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العظيم. الفاتحة.
को रुलाया होगा ज़हर काज़िम को जो उम्मत ने पिलाया होगा अश्क तकदीर की आँखों में भी आए होंगे अश्क तकदीर की आँखों में भी आए होंगे हाय मज़दूरों ने जब लाशा उठाया होगा पूले बगदाद पे अहमद की दुखी बेटी को पूले बगदाद पे अहमद की दुखी बेटी को हाल जंजीरों ने जिंदा का सुनाया होगा नींद जिंदान में मौला को नहीं आती थी नींद जिंदान में मौला को नहीं आती थी ज़हर ने थप किया दे दे के सुलाया होगा ज़हर काज़िम को जो आई तो होगी बहुत मौला को औलाद की याद आई तो होगी बहुत मौला सर पे परदेस में जब मौत का साया होगा, ज़हर काज़िम को जो उसकी तौकीर निराली है, गवाह है ज़ैनब, उसकी तौकीर निराली है, गवाह है ज़ैनब, जिसने एक अश्क भी इस गम में बहाया होगा, ज़हर काज़िम को जो उम्मत ने पिलाया होगा, कलमा गो फातिमा ज़हरा को रुलाया होगा। मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि
نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها ولدينا كتاب ينطق بالحق وهم لا يظلمون بل قلوبهم في غمرة من هذا ولهم أعمال من دون ذلك هم لها عاملون حتى إذا أخذنا مترفيهم بالعذاب إذا هم يجأرون لا تجأروا اليوم إنكم منا لا تنصرون قد كانت آياتي تتلى عليكم فكنتم على أعقابكم تنقصون مستكبرين به سامرا تهجرون أفلم يدبروا القول أم جاءهم ما لم يأت آباءهم الأولين أم لم يعرفوا رسولهم فهم له منكرون أم يقولون به جنة بل جاءهم بالحق وأكثرهم للحق كارهون ولو اتبع الحق أهواءهم لفسدت السماوات والأرض ومن فيهن بل آتيناهم بذكرهم فهم عن ذكرهم معرضون أم تسألهم خرجا فخراج ربك خير وهو خير الرازقين صدق الله العلي العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. And we do not lay on any soul a burden except to the extent of its ability. And with us is a book which speaks the truth, and they shall not be dealt with unjustly. Nay, their hearts are in overwhelming ignorance with respect to it, and they have besides this other deeds which they do. Until when we overtake those who lead easy lives among them with punishment, lo, they cry for succor. Cry not for succor this day, surely you shall not be given help from us. My communications were indeed recited to you, but you used to turn back on your heels, in arrogance, talking nonsense about the Quran, and left him like one telling fables by night. Is it then that they do not ponder over what is said, or is it that there has come to them that which did not come to their fathers of old? Or is it that they have not recognized their apostle, so that they deny him? Or do they say there is madness in him? Nay, he has brought them the truth, and most of them are averse from the truth. And should the truth follow their low desire, surely the heavens and the earth, and all those who are therein would have perished. Nay, we have brought to them their reminder, but from their reminder they turn aside. Or is it that you ask them a recompense, but the recompense of your Lord is best, and He is the best of those who provide sustenance. Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Mu'minun, verse number 62 to 72, discusses about test and this truth that is evident to all of us. We all know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test us, but how will this test be? Allah knows that everybody has different capabilities and He will test us differently. With His infinite wisdom, love, mercy, knowledge, and His knowledge about the individual's responsibilities and abilities, He never obliges a person to do more than his power and his strength, but He expects all of us to do as much as our intelligence and our capabilities are, so that we can accomplish and pass the test successfully. In verse number 63, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the righteous ones. So in verse 63, He concerns the righteous comparing to the unbelievers. So He uses this phrase, ghamr, to describe the hearts of the unbelievers. So what does ghamr mean? Ghamr means the hearts that are steeped in ignorance and awareness, for not only have they rejected the truth, but also their actions are corrupt. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam has said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allah has sworn that three groups have no place in paradise. The first group is that they have rejected the commandment of Allah. The second group is the believer does not obey the command of the Imam of the time. And the third group is the believer that does not give his due to his fellow believer. People who are intoxicated with the world and these worldly desires of theirs, such people will be seized on the day of judgment. And it is said that they will let a howl like that of a beast when hurt. For them will be a painful punishment. For they failed to think and reflect upon the reminder that is the Holy Quran, and rejected the message that was brought by the Holy Prophet, despite knowing him and having given him the title As-Sadiq and Al-Amin, yet they rejected and accused him falsely. Finally, Imam Kadhim, when he was put into prison, he said, "O God, I always used to ask you to free me from other duties in order to worship you, and you have answered me, so thanks be unto you for doing so." We can take a lesson at home today, that even though whatever test we're put in, we should always do shukr, and we should know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not burden a soul more than it can take. We pray that we learn from our Imam to be able to see the grace of God behind every situation. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.
કે તમને ખબર છે લડાઈ ચાલી રહી છે હમણાં યુક્રેનમાં અને આપણી છોકરી એક ત્યાં ભણતી હતી અને અલ્હમ્દુલિલ્લાહ એ સેફ છે અને સવારથી એની સાથે આપણે કોમ્યુનિકેશનમાં છે કે એને પાછળ આવી શકે. ટ્રાય કરતા હતા કે ટ્રેન મળે અમને તો પોલેન્ડ લઈ જાય. સાંજના 4 વાગે ટ્રેન હતી કે પોલેન્ડ સુધી પહોંચે પણ એ ટ્રેન ન મળે છે. બોર્ડર બંધ થઈ ગયા તો એ ટ્રેન ન ગઈ પણ અલ્હમ્દુલિલ્લાહ અમને હમણાં લગભગ 6 વાગે ટેક્સી મળી છે જેને રોમાનિયા લઈ જાય છે. ઇન્શાલ્લાહ 2 કલાકમાં એ બોર્ડરમાં પહોંચી જશે. તમારી પાસે વિનંતી છે ખાલી દુઆમાં એને યાદ કરજો. ઇન્શાલ્લાહ બોર્ડર ક્રોસ કરી લે તો પછી રોમાનિયાથી ત્યાં પછી આ ભાઈ છે રોમાનિયામાં જે એને રિસીવ કરશે. અને બીજો કોઈના કોઈ સગા હોય તો પ્લીઝ કે સ્ટુડન્ટ્સ હોય તો જમાતને ઇન્ફોર્મ કરો તો આપણે હેલ્પ કરી શકીએ. અસલ જઝાકલ્લાહ.
Yes, please. Before I begin, there has been a request for the recitation of IMAMBARGHAH 5 times for the safety of the sister who is trying to make her way out of Ukraine and all the other mu'mineen and mu'minat. So please join me in praying for their safety. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. الصلوات. ما شاء الله لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماوات بأحمد وفي الأرضين بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل أهل بيته الأطيبين الأطهرين سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ملعونين. أما بعد, for the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziya, for the enlightenment of the graves of your marhumin, of the graves of the Shahadat, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahl al-Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who's Rahman and the one who's Rahim. When we look at the life of the seventh holy Imam, there are a number of challenges that the Imam alayhi salam faced. He lived through a time of great difficulty in terms of deviations, moral deviations, economic deviations, religious deviations, spiritual deviations, and social deviations. And many of them, we can summarize them into 5 main subsections, as it were. And the Imam alayhi salam had to navigate his whole life throughout his whole period of imamat, in fact, through each and every one of these deviations. When it comes to the reign of Bani al-Abbas, so Mansur Dawaniqi, Mahdi, Hadi, and then ultimately Harun, there were these 5 main issues that ran throughout all of them. And we'll quickly go through them, then move on to one of a hadith from the 7th Imam, and then inshallah we'll move towards the Masa'ib. The first main issue that was there during the time of the Holy Imam was a moral degradation. This immorality that had become part and parcel of the ruling classes. You will know that when they first rose up in order to overthrow Bani Umayyah and Ali Marwan were overthrown by Bani al-Abbas, it was on the face of it a righteous campaign to take revenge on the enemies of Ahl al-Bayt. But the moment they got into power themselves, not only did they do the same things as Bani Umayyah, but they became far worse than them. So when it comes to moral degradation, you look at the court of Harun, for example, 300 dancing women were stationed inside the court of Harun, and there would be these constant dancing and things that were there for his entertainment. In addition to that, when it comes to his own wedding, 50,000 dinar, when it comes to the singers in the court, every singer that came to take part in his concerts or the things that he had arranged, the history tells us that each of them were paid 50,000 dinar. This moral degradation was entrenched within this whole family. Alcohol was common. Gatherings of alcohol where the ruling classes would get together and sit together and drink alcohol was commonplace within them. So this moral degradation that then ultimately peters down into the wider society as well. The second is an economic degradation, a misappropriation of funds, taking from the people and using them solely for their own purpose. And we'll come to another aspect of that a bit later on. But when it comes to his wedding, 55 million dirham was spent on the wedding of Harun. 55 million dirham. His wife was gifted a Quran wrote entirely in gold. Everything was apportioned to their family, to their friends. When it came to his household, 30 plus dishes were cooked on a daily basis in the palace of Harun for him to select out of any one of them. This misappropriation of the funds of the people led to the third point, which was that poverty became commonplace. And this is deep-rooted poverty, not how will I pay my bills tomorrow or how will I pay my child's school fees. It was people were so poor that they did not have food to eat. And so this is why you find in the life of the 6th Imam and the 7th Imam, especially during this period, they would go throughout the city at night giving bread to people because people were starving under this regime. The fourth main deviation or problem that 7th Imam had to navigate was the opposition and the oppression upon the Alawites, upon the Sadat, and especially the Hassani Sadat. During the time of Mansur, there was such oppression that underneath his castle he had in fact built a museum of the heads of the Hassani Sadat that he had killed. Each of their skulls was taken and placed within this, and underneath a plaque was created and inscribed with the name of that particular Sayyid that was killed. And it was only in the reign of his son Mahdi that, because this place was such a scary place, that he destroyed it. But Mansur had acquired many heads and killed many of the Sadat and placed their heads within this museum under his palace. The testimony of the Alawites was not accepted. If an Alawite came forward to give Shahadat, it was rejected. His guarantorship of the Sayyids from the line of, because they also claimed, Bani al-Abbas also claimed lineage of the Sadat, but from Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet. Nonetheless, of the Fatimis and especially the Hassani Sadat, their guarantorship, if they were to be a guarantor upon a loan, that was not accepted. And many other things. And one of the most significant things that happened is the killing of Hussein ibn Ali and his companions. Hussein ibn Ali, from the lineage of Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, he's also known as Shahid Fakh. He was killed outside of Mecca with the same amount of companions as say the Shahadat had. He was killed, his head was severed from his body, and his head was paraded on a spear, brought to Medina and paraded outside the house of Imam al-Kadhim. Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam says, after the events of Karbala, the killing of Hussein ibn Ali Shahid Fakh is something that was one of the most harrowing events that took place for us Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. All of this is going on, their oppression, and then obviously the oppression of the 7th Imam himself. The Imam is killed at the age of 55, becomes, his period of Imamate is 35 years. 4 to 14 years. There's a difference between the historians. Some say 4, some say 14 years of that period of Imamate was spent in jail. And those jails were not any normal jails. In fact, the last jail that Imam was kept in Baghdad, and those of you that have been to Ziyarah in Baghdad, some people often go to the place where the Imam was kept. That prison of Sharik ibn Sindi was so small, it was underground, damp, like a dungeon, but the height of the roof was so small that the Imam could not stand straight in that place. In fact, when he would stand in ruku for his salah, it would be, when he would stand for qiyam in his salah, it would be as if he was in ruku. That's how low the roof of that particular place was. So the fourth thing that the Imam had to navigate with was this open oppression of the Sadat. And then the fifth main thing was this creation of fake ahadith against the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, deviations within the thought process of people, Tasawwuf had taken a great hold. Many different things, and even after the death of the seventh Imam, the Waqifiyya movement takes hold, saying that the seventh Imam was the Mahdi and he's gone into Ghaiba. But Imam also had to deal with the Ismaili movement that had come after the death of the sixth Imam, and groups that were rejecting his Imamat and were accepting his brother who had died earlier, Ismail, to have been the Imam. So these five main things the Imam alayhi salam was having to deal with, having to go through all of these trials. And many a times the Imam dealt with these problems through a system of wukala, because during the time of the seventh Imam, now this system begins to increase. He has representatives in different places because the Shia population was growing until you reached, for example, the time of the 11th Imam, where now this system of wakils and the system of representatives is very advanced. But the start of it begins to really flourish during the time of the seventh Imam because of this constant oppression and constant watch that the Imam is under. So he would deal with it like that. Sometimes he would deal with issues head on with Harun himself. He would deal with certain things. Harun would try and call him to the court to humiliate him, and many of these things you've heard before. But the Imam would then try and deal with these matters straight away, head on with Harun, or at times he would meet in secret with other companions and give them teachings, place people in certain positions. Ali ibn Yaqtin, who we'll speak about, was a minister that the Imam had encouraged to go and work in the court of Harun. But the Imam had said to him, go there, work, help the Shi'as. So there were different ways that the Imam used to navigate this. But we, as I've said in previous lectures as well, we want to take from the Imam one hadith, because that in reality is what the A'immah alayhimus salam came to do, to take us towards a higher plane of existence, to fulfill our destiny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had written for us to be human, for us to get closer towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this particular hadith, the seventh Imam alayhi salam, he talks about three lights that exist within the believer. And these three lights that are extinguished by three other things. And if they're all to be extinguished, it leads to one's aql becoming subservient to his emotions or to his desires, that ultimately then leads to the person's destruction, or the destruction of his deen and the dunya. So what is it that the Imam says? He addresses his companion Hisham. He says, "O Hisham, whosoever allows three things to extinguish the light of three things within himself, he is helped in the destruction of his aql, of his intellect." What are those three things? The first thing the Imam says, the one that extinguishes the light of tafakkur, the light of pondering, the light of meditation, the light of deep thinking, with long far-fetched hopes. So what is it that destroys tafakkur? We've been told many a times in narrations, ponder. We've been told in the Holy Quran, ponder, contemplate. But many of us don't do it. Between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just asking myself the question, how many times a day do I get an opportunity to sit down and just contemplate? Contemplate on what? How to grow my business? Because those things we're good at. Strategizing my career path. How I'm going to achieve that particular academic excellence that I'm chasing. That sort of stuff we're very good at. We'll table it, we'll think about it. But actually tafakkur is far greater than that. It is about contemplating your own existence, your own journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pondering over the reason for my existence, which in reality is the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself in Hadith Qudsi, he says, كنت كنزا مخفيا فأحببت أن أعرف فخلقت الخلق لكي أعرف. I was a hidden treasure. I desired to be known. So I created creation so that they may come to know me. The ultimate aim of everything that God has put in this world, the obligations that He has placed around our necks through the Sharia, is towards one aim, and that is the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is to know God, to understand God, to have God permeate through every single aspect of my life, not having this dual existence, that God only exists for me when I come to the masjid. He doesn't exist for me in my dealings with other people. He doesn't exist for me in terms of my business dealings, or He doesn't exist for me in terms of my interactions with my family. But when I come to the masjid, He exists for me. He doesn't exist for me outside of the musalla. When I go to pray, I wear nice hijab and everything. I make sure everything is covered for the sisters, and because I'm standing in front of God. But the moment I step off that small 5.5 foot by 2 foot rug, then everything is off again. It is as if God didn't exist for me. And so the ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that every single aspect, every single part of your life is permeated through that knowing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even my du'as, when I go and I pray to Him, I pray for things that are so trivial. In my mind, because I haven't broadened my horizons, I haven't opened my mind, I have restricted my mind to this single plane of existence. I restrict myself from ascending towards my true potential. See, my du'as are about economic problems, are about illnesses, are about things that are related to this world, are related to matters of society. But those things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives anyway. Those things that I stay awake at night worrying about, how will I pay my bills, what will I leave for my children, He's given those anyway. That's a given. In the dua of Rajab, what do you say? Ya man yu'ti man sa'ala, ya man yu'ti man lam yas'alhu wa man lam ya'rifhu tahannunan minhu wa rahma. Oh, the one that gives to the one that asks from him. Oh, the one that gives to the one that does not ask from him. And oh, the one that gives to the one that doesn't even acknowledge that he exists. Tahannunan minhu wa rahma. Out of His ultimate mercy, He gives to the kafir food to eat. He gives to the mu'min food to eat. He gives rizq to the one that will swear at Him and say He doesn't exist. He gives rizq to the one that is murtad, that has turned his back on Allah. And He gives to the one that believes in Him. So this means that our aim should be greater. But that only comes when I understand my Lord more. In these holy months of Rajab, Sha'ban, leading to Shahr Ramadan, to that ultimate pinnacle of Laylatul Qadr, one needs to raise their standards somewhat. Look at the du'as that are there from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. I was looking earlier at one of the other short du'as that has been narrated by the 6th Imam, Imam Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. What is it that the Imam is asking? In Rajab, I want to know. Everybody keeps on saying, yes, Rajab is the month of istighfar, Rajab is preparation for Shahr Ramadan, but how do I prepare? What do I ask for? What is it that the sixth Imam is asking for? In the start of this dua, it's very short. In the start, the opening lines of it tell us everything. It says, Allahumma inni as'aluka sabr shakirina lak. My Lord, the first thing I'm asking you is that give me the patience of those that are thankful. The shakirin are thankful in difficulty and in ease. They never forget to thank God. They never forget to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter how trivial it is. We think that when the problem is big, then I'll turn to Allah. When I can't solve the issue with my friends or my family members, then I'll turn to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to Hazrat Musa, He says, Musa, pray to me even for the salt that you want to put in your food. Says everything, every moment, everything that you desire, even as trivial as putting salt in your food, ask from me. The shakirin are those that are constantly in remembrance of Allah. وَعَمَلَ الْخَائِفِينَ مِنْكَ, and give and make my actions like those that are fearful of you. Who are those that are fearful of Him? Those who don't live those double lives, those dual lives that I live. Imam al-Hussein in Dua Arafah, after pages and pages of Alhamdulillah, 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 eventually he comes and asks his first dua. And what is it? Allahumma ja'alni akhshaka ka'anni arak. Says, my Lord, create that fear in me of you as if I am seeing you. Not fear because, oh, He's going to punish me. No, a higher level of fear which comes with ma'rifah, that I understand His majesty, His greatness. And so instantly, it is a fear of respect that enters into my heart. And then the third thing the Imam asks for in this dua of Rajab, وَيَقِينَ الْعَابِدِينَ لَكَ, and give me the yaqeen of those that are true worshippers of you. Aspire to be like others. This in itself in between is a lesson for us in terms of who is it that we take as our role models in life. Aspire to those that are better than you. Aspire to those that you believe have better morals than you, that have better worship than you. Try and stay with them. Give me the yaqeen of those that are worshipping you constantly. And who's greater, what greater yaqeen is there than the yaqeen of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, لو كشف الغطاء ما ازددت يقينا, that if every single one of the curtains was lifted in front of the eyes of Ali, his yaqeen wouldn't increase by an atom. And what is the yaqeen? You heard the young brother recite before. The yaqeen of the seventh Imam. He's thrown into prison. I'm in that situation, I get thrown into prison unjustly. I will hate the world and everything that is associated and all those people that threw me and put me into that situation. But look at what it is that the seventh Imam says. Says, my Lord, I'm thankful to you. I ask to you for solitude so that I could worship you uninterrupted. And so, my Lord, you gave me prison. See, at times, trials in our lives are silver linings. We just are always, our glass is always half empty. It's not half full. See, if trials in our life, and we looked at the difficulties and the problems in our life with a glass half full mentality, then we wouldn't feel that pain, we wouldn't feel that loss, we wouldn't feel that hate towards everything and anyone that is associated to that. Because I know this is developing me as an individual. The second thing that the Imam says, the second light that will be extinguished through another thing, he says, and it is the light of hikmah, wisdom, that is extinguished through excessive useless talk, through exaggeration, through swearing, through hurting someone with our harsh words. Now at times, a harsh word, a sin, takes away from us certain levels of ma'nawiyah. I can't cry anymore during the masa'ib of Ahlul Bayt. I don't feel like praying. I don't feel like reciting dua. I need to look back and think, what is it that I have done that took away from me that love of that ibadat? Now the fourth Imam in Dua, Abu Hamza Thumari, he has where he explains almost 13 different reasons. He says, my Lord, I don't know what it is. Whenever I wish to sit down and do munajat with you, something gets in the way. Or every time I make the intention to recite Salatul Layl in the middle of the night, أَلْقَيْتُ عَلَيَّ نُعَاسًا إِذَا أَنَّ صَلَّيْتُ, you cast sleep on me. And I don't feel like praying anymore. Or whenever I find that my gatherings are becoming the gatherings of the tawabin, of people that remember you, that repent towards you, something happens and it separates me from that group. And then he says, Sayyidi, لَعَلَّكَ أَنْ بَابِكَ تَرَدْتَنِي وَعَنْ خِدْمَتِكَ نَاهَيْتَنِي. My Lord, let it not be the case that you have removed me from your service, you have pushed me away from your door. And then he begins to list, oh la'allaka, oh la'allaka, oh la'allaka. Maybe it is because you found me to be a liar. Maybe it is because you found me not to be thankful. Maybe it is because you found me to be ghafil. Maybe it is because you found me amongst the wrongdoers. 13 reasons he lists. At times there is something that we do that pushes us away from the door of God, that takes away that love from our hearts. Someone comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, Ya Ali, I can't recite Salatul Layl anymore. Amir al-Mu'mineen looks at him, he says, you are a man that has been imprisoned by his sins. These things that we do push us away from Allah, push us away from the hujjah of Allah. Ali ibn Yaqteen, I mentioned, he was a minister in the court of Harun, placed there upon the advice that Imam al-Kadhim gave him. And many a times he tried to leave that position and the Imam said, no, stay. Help our Shi'as when they come to you. Ali ibn Yaqteen is that individual that the seventh Imam, when he's talking about him, he says, if anyone wants to see a man from heaven, look towards Ali ibn Yaqteen. Imagine. Or then the Imam says to him, oh Ali ibn Yaqteen, in Hajj, when I was in the plains of Arafah, you were in my mind constantly, and I did dua for you in Arafah constantly. Imagine Ali ibn Yaqteen, with all that greatness, that he too could fall in the eyes of the Imam. How? Ali ibn Yaqteen, he's conducting his business as the minister. One of the Shia of Kufa by the name of Ibrahim al-Jammal comes to visit him. He had a problem. So he comes to Ali ibn Yaqteen, and Ali ibn Yaqteen that day has had a bad day. Yeah, he's stressed, he's angry, there's some issue going on with him. Ibrahim al-Jammal comes to him. Ali ibn Yaqteen is harsh towards him, sends him away, says, look, I can't help you, sends him away. Ibrahim al-Jammal turns back, hopeless, comes, returns back to Kufa. Some months later, Ali ibn Yaqteen embarks on a journey to Hajj. After completing Hajj, he comes to Medina to visit the 7th Imam. He knocks on the door of the 7th Imam, and the servant of the Imam comes to the door. He says, yes. He says, tell the Imam Ali ibn Yaqtin is here and wishes to meet him. The servant goes back inside. A short while later he comes out. He says, the Imam says, don't give Ali ibn Yaqtin permission to enter. Ali ibn Yaqtin says, tell him that it's Ali ibn Yaqtin. He says, yes. The Imam said, Ali ibn Yaqtin, the minister of Harun, do not give him permission to enter. I don't want to see him. Ali ibn Yaqtin was close to the Imam. He says, my feet didn't have the strength to leave the street of the Imam. Instead, I just paced outside. Hours went by. I paced outside the door of the Imam, thinking somehow the Imam will come out and I need to ask the Imam what it is that I've done. Hours passed, and he says eventually Imam al-Kadhim came outside of his house. Ali ibn Yaqtin ran towards him, says, Imam, did I do something wrong? What is it that you will not grant me your ziyarah? Imam says to him, Ali ibn Yaqtin, you did not show respect to you did not show respect to one of our Shi'as, Ibrahim Jammal. So Ali ibn Yaqtin, we too did not show you any respect. Says, Ya Ibn Rasulillah, I made a mistake. Says Ali ibn Yaqtin, know this. Now remember what the Imam had said about him. If anyone wants to see a man of Jannah, look towards Ali ibn Yaqtin. Imam says to him, Ali ibn Yaqtin, know this, that while this individual, you hurt his feelings and did not apologize towards him, none of your ibadat is accepted, and your hajj is also not accepted. If you want all of your ibadat to be accepted and your hajj to be accepted, go to Ibrahim Jammal and ask for forgiveness. Until he forgives you, none of your a'mal is accepted. Says, Imam, I'm in Medina, how do I go? Imam says, go to Baqiyah. There will be a camel there. Sit on it. It will take you to the house of Ibrahim Jammal. Lucky are those that take that ibrah, that guidance that comes to them. Ali ibn Yaqtin sits on the camel, ends up at the house of Ibrahim Jammal. He goes, he knocks at his door, he says, is Ibrahim Jammal at home? They say, who is it? Say to him, it's Ali ibn Yaqtin. Ibrahim Jammal comes out, says, what is it that you want from me? So Ali ibn Yaqtin falls to the ground. He places his face in the earth. He says, Ibrahim Jammal, do something for me. Says, what? He says, place your foot on my face. Says, why? He says, please don't ask, just place your foot on my face. Ali ibn Yaqtin rubs his face in the earth. Ibrahim Jammal places his foot on the face of Ali ibn Yaqtin. At that moment, Ali ibn Yaqtin says, oh Allah, I humiliated this person, now I have humiliated myself. Oh Allah, soften the heart of the Imam towards me. Soften the heart of the Imam towards me. After that, he returns back to Medina. The Imam embraces him, holds him, and greets him like he would. One harsh word, and Ali ibn Yaqtin can fall from his pedestal. We have to be wary of what it is that we say, what it is that we do. The third thing that the Imam says, the third nur in the heart of an individual is the nur of ibrah, is the nur of lessons, of taking lessons from events that one sees. Says that nur of ibrah, the ability to take lessons from events that happen in front of my eyes, will be extinguished if one follows their desires. If one gives in to their desires, that's light, because not everyone, I can sit here, other people can, even the Imam could sit in a place and give you lessons and give you ibrah and give you guidance and give you nasiha. But if I don't want to change myself, I won't change. And that ability to change requires effort. But if I have already accustomed myself to laziness, I've already accustomed others to doing things for me, then I won't have the grit within my own nafs to correct my nafs. It says, following one's desires will extinguish the light of ibrah. Bishr al-Hafi is one of the famous companions, and the Sufis also take him as being one of their awliya. They say that Bishr was famous for his parties. He would hold big parties in his home, call people over, there would be mixing, there would be drinking, there would be music, and people would come and have fun at the house of Bishr. One day the servant girl of Bishr is coming out from the house, and she sees a small man, thin, walking past. He stops outside the house. He says, whose house is this? She says to him, this is the house of Bishr. Says, is Bishr a free man or is he a slave? The servant girl begins to laugh. She says, no, Bishr is a free man. I am his slave. Says that this man looked towards the house and said, yes, surely he is a free man. Otherwise he would not have disrespected his Mawla, his master, in such a way. The slave, and he walks off, and the slave girl goes back inside the house. Bishr says, what is it that took you so long? He has alcohol in his hand. She says, oh, I went outside, there was a man there, he said that, he heard the music, whose house is this? And I said, it's the house of Bishr. And he asked me, is Bishr a free man or is Bishr a slave? And I said that you are a free man. And then he said to me, surely you are a free man, otherwise you would not have disrespected your Mawla, your master, in such a way. Bishr has alcohol in his hand. He throws it to the ground. He runs out. He says that could have been none other than Imam al-Kadhim, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. He runs out from the house, leaving his shoes in the house. He runs and he finds the Imam. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, yes, up until today, I was a free man, but from this point on, I am an abd. And he spent the rest of his life not wearing any shoes. Hence he was known as Bishr al-Hafi, the barefooted one. Ibrah. As long as that light, as long as one is able to take lessons and advice from people, there is still hope for salvation. But the moment I become pig-headed and arrogant, and I'm not willing to listen to the advice of others, then that light begins to extinguish within me. And the Imam says, when all three of these lights have extinguished, that individual's desires have overcome his intellect, and the one whose intellect has become overcome by his desires has neither his deen nor his dunya. He has corrupted both his deen and his dunya. Simple narration from the Imam, but with depth. Each one of us can analyze our own lives and see what it is exactly that we have. What is my life like? Am I out or am I a free man? Do I live my life like a slave of Allah, or do I live my life like a free man, shackled by the multiplicities of this mortal realm? Seventh Imam taught us, in the face of all of these difficulties, never let go of your connection with Allah. even if the trials become so difficult that now your dua turns and you begin to say, Allahumma inni asaluka rahata inda al-maut. Oh Allah, make my death easy. The dua of the 7th Imam while in the prison of Sindhi ibn Sharik. Such was the oppression that the Imam faced. It wasn't just physical violence, but it was emotional and mental torture. At one point they say that they brought a woman of ill repute inside the prison of the Imam. They threw her inside and they locked the door. She entered and she saw a man in sajda doing munajat with his Lord. They waited a few hours, then they opened the door and they found her too in the state of sajda. When they called her, they said, we sent you in order to try and deviate him. You too will remain in prison. She says, give me an opportunity to go and speak to Harun, and then do whatever you want. If he wishes to kill me, kill me. Says, I want to say something to him. Says, what is it that you want to say to Harun? She says, I will go to him and I will say to him, a man with all of this greatness, with all of this purity, why is it that you have him in such a prison? The oppression that befell the Imam, a place where he could not even stand himself. In the ziyarat of the Imam, you have mention of his shackles. His shackles were such that they had softened the bones of his body. That they had remained, the bones had become soft in his body. The word that is used in Arabic means to soften the bones. It is the same words that were used by those that went to Ibn Ziyad. They said, oh Ibn Ziyad, we are the ones that soften the body, soften the bones of the chest of Hussein under the hooves of our horses. They said that the bones of Imam al-Kadhim had become soft from the constant chains that were around his body, but eventually they would no longer be able to bear with the Imam. They came, they brought him dates poisoned. 7 dates Sindhi ibn Sharik places in front of the Imam. The Imam eats 2 and he pushes the plate away. He says to him, eat all 7. He says, no, these 2 that you have given me will help you reach the aim that you had. The Imam ﷺ struggles through that period. Marhum Kafi would narrate that says that as the Imam began to reach to the end of his life, they say that they undid the shackles, they carried the Imam out to another house. And then they invited all of the Shi'as and they said, come quickly, come and see your Imam before he dies. He's ill. Know that people have been saying that we had him in prison, we've had him tied up in chains. This is all a lie. Come and look at him. He fell ill. He's dying. They say the Imam was lying there unconscious. These Shi'as were brought inside. They looked at the Imam lying there unconscious. Then he comes to them. He says, look, you have seen him. Now sign this paper to say, you see him, he's ill. There's nothing wrong with him. He's ill. He's simply dying from an illness. They say as the Shi'as went forward in order to sign that paper, the Imam opened his eyes, said, oh my Shi'as, don't sign the paper. Surely they have poisoned me. The Shi'as all left from the house. He goes after them. Sindhi ibn Sharik goes after them. He sees that all of them are going out telling people. They go back, he goes back inside the house, he shuts the door. Marhum Kafi would say that I cannot narrate what it is that he did to Imam al-Kadhim, but it is this much enough for you to know, O Shi'as, that when he left the house his hands were empty, but when he returned back towards Imam al-Kadhim, in his hand was a whip. They announced again soon to the Shi'as that your Imam will be freed. The Shi'as became happy. They all gathered, they took the Imam back to the prison, shackled him. They all became happy that the Imam is coming. They gathered outside waiting for the Imam. But when the doors opened, there were 4 men carrying a bed. Zahiran, it seemed like this bed only had a blanket on top. They could not see that there was anything underneath that blanket. And they were announcing as they walked, this is the Imam of the Rafidis. This is the Imam of the Rafidis. They realized that under that blanket was the body of the Imam. The Imam had become so weak and from all of those years in prison that they could not tell that the body of the Imam was under there. All they could hear was the rattling and the clinking of the chains. The body of the Imam is taken, placed upon the bridge of Baghdad for 3 days under the searing heat of Baghdad. The body of the Imam lies upon that bridge. Finally the Shias come. Sulaiman comes, he brings an expensive coffin. When it comes to give ghusl and coffin, Imam al-Rada comes to give coffin to his father, comes to bury his father. Oh Imam al-Rada, how lucky you were. Yes, your father faced imprisonment. Yes, his chains were still attached to his body, but he had a coffin at least. Come to Karbala and look at Sajjad. He comes to the body of his father. Now he knows not what to do. He looks down at the broken body of his father. He turns to Bani Asad. Oh Bani Asad, do you have a piece of cloth that I may use? They say, what are you going to do with the piece of cloth? He says, when they trampled my father's body under the hooves of the horses, his body, his limbs became separated from his body. My father's body is in no state to be lifted in one piece. I will take him piece by piece, place him on this cloth and lower him into the grave. القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. مات حسين.
हो गया मूसा काज़िम गरीब, अरे 13 बरस कैद थे और थे बीमार भी, की ना दवा बेग़िज़ा मूसा काज़िम गरीब, आई फलक से सदा मूसा काज़िम गरीब, कत्ल हुए बेखता मूसा काज़िम गरीब।
या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। सलामत रहे ज़ादारान हुसैन। या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या पढ़ते रहिए नाम या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन। जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई है, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई है, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई है, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई। फर्जंद पे रोने को बगदाद के पुल पर, फर्जंद पे रोने को बगदाद के पुल पर, जन्नत से चली होगी ज़हरा की सवारी, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई है, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई है, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई। 9 साल गुजारे हैं जिंदान में रहकर, 9 साल गुजारे हैं जिंदान में रहकर, जादी है मगर लोगों शरीयत है बचाई, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई है, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई। ये आले मोहम्मद का किरदार है लोगों, ये आले मोहम्मद का किरदार है लोगों, हारून के जिंदा में भी तस्बीह है इलाही, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई है, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, जिंदान से काज़िम को ज़हरा ने है जंजीर में पाई, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, है जिंदान से काज़िम माशाअल्लाह जी मिली कैसे रिहाई, है कब उठी मैयत काज़िम की कफन में, काज़िम की कफन में, जब शाम से मिलने को नबी ज़ादी है आई, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, है जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई। हम माले उठाते ऐसी है आई, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, है जिंदान से काज़िम माशाअल्लाह जी सलामत रहे मिली कैसे रिहाई। बेगोरो कफन मैयत बगदाद के पुल पर, बेगोरो कफन बगदाद के पुल पर, ये साथ हुए मजलूम ने है रस्म निभाई, है जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, है जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, है फर्जंद पे रोने को बगदाद के पुल पर, फर्जंद पे रोने को बगदाद के पुल पर, जन्नत से चली होगी ज़हरा की सवारी, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, है जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई। खादिम रहे इस दर का तामर्क मेरे मौला, खादिम रहे इस दर का तामर्क मेरे मौला, शाहिद की तमन्ना है ज़ाकिर की ज़ुबानी, जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई, है जिंदान से काज़िम को मिली कैसे रिहाई।
Hussein, Hussein, ya Hussein, ya Hussein, Hussein, ya Hussein, ya Hussein, ya Hussein.
उनके बाबा का मुर्सा
Ya Hussein, Hussein, ya Hussein, ya Hussein.
नाना नबी दादा अली दादी तेरी खैरुन निसा,
Al-Madad, Mawla Raza, Al-Madad.
وسيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى علي.